This is All India Radio. Yuvavani.
Good evening to all the listeners. I'm Chaitra and I'm a BCom graduate from Mount Carmel College. So, in today's session, I'll be addressing the concept of unlearning and relearning. So, I recently came across this quote that said, "The accelerating pace of change means that we need to question our beliefs more readily than ever before." And it got me thinking that we often translate keeping up with the pace of our environment in terms of technological or lifestyle upgradation. But are we really looking at its core? If we did, I don't think we would ever consciously feel the need to keep up with the pace of something. It would be more of a natural process, right, in that case. And the reason it isn't is because, as much as we pride ourselves to be on the woke or self aware spectrum, we really aren't comfortable being subjected to an unlearning and relearning curve. So, let me first take some time to explain what it means to unlearn and relearn. So, unlearning is a process that people engage in to challenge their previously held beliefs, previously held thoughts, previously held knowledge on topics that are near and dear to them. It is a process we take part in when we try to examine our preconceived notions by analyzing information that we don't agree with in general. So, in analogy, it can be thought of as, let's say, updating our brain. Just like computers need new software updates, our brains also need to unlearn and relearn in order to make advances. So, a quick example of how I have introduced these concepts to myself and how I'm going about it. I saw myself stuck in a loop where I was constantly seeking for something that'll excite me. On the outlook, this restlessness in me was being portrayed as productivity for some reason. I don't know how. So people appreciated me for not settling for anything lesser than what I deserve and for always being on the lookout for something new. Yeah, that's pretty much how, my restlessness and lack of consistency was glamorized by my own social circles at one point. So, despite all the validation I was getting, I did sense something strong about my way of functioning. That was when I decided to take a pause. I addressed every small detail about how I've been functioning for all these years, and that's how I could understand that the moment monotony kicks in, I tend to switch my interests, regardless of whether or not I've completed the task. But what's more interesting is, the kind of stuff you get to decode about yourself when you introspect a little more on the issue. When I got to its roots, I could figure out that, so due to lack of having personal goals that challenged my abilities, I'm trying to seek that element in every other task I perform. So the moment I feel less challenged by my tasks, I immediately switch. And this is again a toxic loop. So the solution ultimately was to understand what personal goals I can set for myself and what challenges my abilities. This for sure isn't a quick process and it definitely does take a good amount of time. So, here for me, the unlearning process or the unlearning curve was to understand that I function at a different pace and forcing the hustle culture on myself in the name of seeking clarity only pushes me further down to mediocrity and it does not bring out the best in me. And what I got to relearn was that no two people can function with the same formula. No matter however like minded the two of them could be, but there's absolutely no way for both of them could function up to their best potential using the same formula. So, this was one thing I got to relearn. Each one of us have our own formulas to function, so it's time we invest in ourselves to understand what works the best for us. And idealizing and looking up to people is always a nice thing, no doubt. But I also got to understand that we can only idealize or appreciate people for who they are and what they could pull off, considering their realities and circumstances. Equating their success with your realities and circumstances is only going to promote comparison and again mediocrity. So, this is again a toxic loop I'm talking about. It also makes us think lesser and lesser about figuring out our own individual formula to function. So, this pretty much is toxic, when you think about it. And idealizing should broaden our perspective on different areas of life, rather, different gray areas of life. Instead, with this approach, it's only making people take their own abilities less seriously, is what I could figure out at one point. So also it's really beautiful how these like these minute concepts just detangle themselves within your mind, as a part of self-realization. When you will indeed enjoy the process if it's this way. And for it to happen, it's important to invest in yourself. And this investment in oneself calls for some self-exploration too, where you will subject yourself to tasks or situations that are completely out of your comfort zone. And I definitely say it's a beautiful process to go through. The same process, when applied to understand your emotional functionality, it offers a whole new experience altogether. When I subjected myself to this specific learning curve, I got to face every uncomfortable thought and every uncomfortable feeling which I normally would have refrained from addressing. So, my best takeaway from this was I can't give what I don't have. If I don't love myself, I can't love. If I haven't extended grace to myself, I can't extend grace. And if I haven't forgiven myself at some point, I can't extend forgiveness. So, this way, I understood that I can become a better version of myself at every single stage of life with a lot more ease and with a lot less baggage. That's when I also understood it's important to nurture myself, because that's probably the best way to, you know, approach this journey of life. So, we as a society are conditioned to understand the pace of an individual's life based on their age. Like it's always assumed for a teenager's life to be a fast paced one, rather an unstoppable one, maybe. So, for some reason, I've always felt threatened by this stereotype. Though I completely didn't agree with this thought, I did have my set of fears, about taking this pause after my bachelor's degree. But when I anyway took that pause, the unlearning curve there was to understand that we are all too busy making other people's urgencies our priority, because we fear missing out on things, opportunities, events. We just fear missing out the best for us. And relearning curve here was that we are way too invested in the events happening around us, expecting them to touch our lives in some way. Until and unless you take that leap for yourself, and until and unless you recognize when it is the right time to pause, detangle yourself, lose that baggage, no amount of experience can touch your life. This was probably the most beautiful relearning curve I could arrive at. So that way, I am truly grateful for understanding and experiencing the gift of unlearning and relearning, and what it has got to offer to one's life if it's done well. So, I would like to end this with a very powerful quote, of a personal favorite rather. So, and it goes like, an illiterate will not be the one who cannot read and write, but it is the one who cannot unlearn and relearn. I would like to thank All India Radio for this wonderful opportunity. This truly has been a different experience, considering the fact that I've been here a couple of times earlier too. So, whatever I got to share with you all right now has been my own journey for the last 6 months. And the reason why I mentioned this time felt different addressing something like this in a public space is because I've only been able to live this journey. I've never got an opportunity to sum it up and convey my learnings in a structured form. So this sort of helped me reintroduce myself to this concept all over again. So I just felt that it came through at the right time. So I would like to thank All India Radio once again for this opportunity, and thank you all for listening. So take care.
With that, we conclude tonight's Yuvavani. This program was a presentation of All India Radio Bengaluru.